F-16 orders to Taiwan at high risk of delays. Philippines woos neighbors to craft code on South China Sea. Thailand's economy is slowing. Xi Jinping's bold military purge continues. Myanmar's ethnic groups launch unprecedented armed resistance. UK PM Sunak reportedly said, "Just let people die," during COVID. Russia admits it was on the verge of economic collapse last year. Japan assessing a possible tsunami risk after PNG volcano erupts.
Hello, I'm Wei Lee. Thank you for joining us on Funday News. It is Wednesday, November 22nd, and here are your top stories. Bloomberg reported a group of U.S. Republican lawmakers warned the two F-16 fighter jets programs for Taiwan remains at high risk of falling further behind, despite efforts to accelerate deliveries to bolster the country's defense against China. In a letter to Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall last Friday, the 24 GOP representatives said they appreciated the Biden administration's efforts to speed up delivery, but are concerned that past difficulties in completing the production and transfer of F-16s could drag on.
A letter spearheaded by Representative Rob Wittman, Vice Chair of the House Armed Services Committee, said, "As regional security concerns around the world expand, we urge you to focus on delivering the military aid that we have promised to Taiwan." The lawmakers called for Kendall to provide a report by December 18th detailing the status of plans to complete a retrofit program for Taiwan's 141 existing F-16 fighters, as well as delivery of 66 new F-16 aircraft built by Lockheed Martin Corp.
Philippines President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. said Monday that his country has approached neighbors such as Malaysia and Vietnam to discuss a separate code of conduct regarding the South China Sea, citing limited progress towards striking a border regional pact with China. He said, "We have taken the initiative to approach those other countries around ASEAN with whom we have existing territorial conflicts to make our own code of conduct. Hopefully, this will grow further and extend to other ASEAN countries."
Reuters reported that China said formulating a code of conduct in the South China Sea was an important task for it and ASEAN countries. But a spokesperson of its foreign ministry warned at a regular press briefing, any move that deviates from the framework and runs counter to the spirit of the Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea is null and void. The remarks by Marcos followed his meeting last Friday with Chinese President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the APEC Forum in San Francisco.
Thailand's economy grew at its slowest pace in almost a year in the third quarter, and analysts say the trend is here to stay. Official data on Monday showed Thailand's gross domestic product grew 1.5% year-on-year for the quarter ending September. That's far below expectations of 2.4% by economists polled by Reuters, and lower than the 1.8% expansion in the second quarter. The reading marked the second straight quarter of easing growth in Thailand's economy.
The Bank of Thailand raised its key interest rate 8 times and said economic growth and inflationary pressures could pick up next year. However, analysts at Nomura said, the weak Q3 GDP outturn will likely intensify the government's push for a large digital wallet handout, despite the uncertainty around the financing plan. In addition, a long pause or potential cuts in the BOT's policy rate could also mean bad news for the Thai baht, which has shed 1.3% against the dollar so far this year and is headed for its fourth yearly decline.
According to a report published last week by Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council, Chinese leader Xi Jinping is continuing to purge his country's military leadership. The report said Xi Jinping launched a new wave of military purges. Many high-ranking generals from the Equipment Development Department of the Central Military Commission and the Rocket Force were arrested. The purge notably targeted Li Shangfu, China's former defense minister, who was officially removed from his post last month.
According to the report, Xi's decisive actions have resulted in a significant shift in the power dynamics within the PLA, hinting at speculation that the moves could lead to instability within its ranks. Newsweek said the developments come at a time of heightened tensions in the Asia-Pacific, with China's military maneuvers being closely monitored by several regional powers. Since earlier this year, Beijing's upper echelons have been deepening their crackdown on corruption and misconduct.
Fighters in Myanmar between the military junta and an alliance of ethnic armed groups have intensified since late October, after an unprecedented offensive in the country's north exposed the junta's struggle on the ground. The UN called for all sides to respect international law in the statement last Friday, saying that more than 70 civilians had already been killed and some 200,000 displaced by the upsurge in violence. Ethnic armed groups in several regions launched simultaneous offensives across the country.
Dubbed Operation 1027, the offensive began on October 27th in northern Shan State on the Chinese border. Specialist on Myanmar at the International Crisis Group Thomas Keane said 3 armed groups, the Taing National Liberation Army, the Arakan Army and the Myanmar National Democratic Alliance Army, have joined forces under the Three Brotherhood Alliance moniker. They seized several towns and villages in the region, took control of military outposts and cut off important trade routes to China.
According to an inquiry into how Britain handled the COVID-19 pandemic, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak was quoted as saying the government should just let people die during the crisis rather than impose a second national lockdown. A spokesman for Sunak said the Prime Minister would set out his position when he gives evidence to the inquiry. The danger for Sunak is the evidence at the inquiry undermines his attempt to cast himself as a change to the chaotic leadership of Boris Johnson.
The UK government's ex-chief scientific advisor Patrick Vallance made a note in his diary on October 25, 2020, about a meeting involving then Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Sunak, who was finance minister. Vallance said in the diary that Dominic Cummings, Johnson's most senior advisor during the pandemic, told him during the meeting that Rishi thinks just let people die and that's okay. Vallance wrote in his diary, "This all feels like a complete lack of leadership."
Russia admitted that its economy was on the brink of ruin last year, but it claims now that it has beaten sanctions and is on track for strong growth this year, despite economists' projections in light of persistent restrictions on its economy. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said to Russia's state-run news agency TASS last Sunday, "There was a threat of a collapse. We really had to mobilize all resources and internal forces in order to prevent this collapse," referring to the Western economic sanctions last year.
Peskov added, "Thanks to the rather insightful and wise decisions of the country's leadership, it was possible to reach a plateau, stabilize and then, in an absolutely unexpected way, enter a growth trend." However, experts and observers have expressed doubt over the country's economic future. Critical sectors, like Russia's auto industry, have nearly completely collapsed over the past year. Meanwhile, inflation continues to rage, and central bankers are scrambling to prop up the value of Russia's ruble.
A volcano in Papua New Guinea erupted on Monday, and the Japan Meteorological Agency said it was assessing a possible risk of a tsunami for Japanese coasts. The agency said, quoting the Volcanic Ash Advisory Center in Darwin, Australia, Mount Ulawon on the island of New Britain in Papua New Guinea erupted at around 3:30 p.m. local time Monday, spewing volcanic smoke as high as 15,000 meters. The agency said it was assessing a possible impact, including the risk of a tsunami approaching Japan later Monday.
The Japanese agency said the first tsunami waves could reach Izu and Ogasawara Islands about 3 hours after the shaking caused by the eruption. The agency has not issued any tsunami advisory or warning. It said that no notable change to sea levels has been detected at observation sites in and outside Japan. Papua New Guinea's Geohazards Management Division said the eruption is expected to continue indefinitely and raise the volcano's risk level to the highest stage of 4.
The answer for yesterday was A, trademark. Ford allowed the name and trademark to lapse during the 80s. Did you answer correctly? Now let's delve into the news of UK PM Sunak reportedly saying just let people die during COVID. Number 1, inquire, 询问打听. We received over 300 inquiries about the job. Number 2, impose, 逼使，把某事加强于. This system imposes additional financial burdens on many people. Number 3, undermine, 逐渐削弱，使逐步减少效力. Our confidence in the team has been seriously undermined by their recent defeats. Next, we have a multiple choice question for everyone to practice. Which answer would you choose? You can write your answer in the comments section. The correct answer will be announced tomorrow. And that's all for today's Funday News. Be sure to tune into Funday News from Monday to Friday and click the link below to join Funday for free. I'm Wei Li, your host. I'll see you next time.